later on. A related question would be that when we read this, because this thing is slightly important to understand, this to such extent as expressly authorized, one reading of it shows that the word expressly was also underlined earlier. What does it mean? So to such extent is expressly authorized. So it means that there could be a possibility that it is not authorized. I mean, there is no extent given. Extent to such extent means that there might be an extent, but there might be no extent. So where there is no extent, no express authorization is given, and the field is open. As long as it is going to be regulated by that, but if there is no such extent expressly authorized, what do we do? I mean, then it's if my Lord's Constitution has not provided that extent, my Lord's Constitution then allows the Parliament.
My Lords may kindly turn to Article 203DD, Clause 3. This will answer my Lord's question. 203DD, Clause 3.
Yes.
Now this says the court shall have such other jurisdiction as may be conferred on it by any law, and leaves it open to go as far, which the Federal Sharia Court can perhaps do. And then when we look at Article 199, Clause 1, it does not provide any extent to the authorization to what could be done with the jurisdiction. But
if you say what you're saying is contradicting the whole premise of your case. अगर फर्म शरीयत कोर्ट में या तो ये चीज तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के साथ भी होनी चाहिए थी, अगर हम आपकी बात माने तो फिर तो दिस प्रोविजन जो आपने
ये एक्सटेंट ऑफ ऑथराइजेशन है ऑल कोर्ट्स, तो फेडरल शरिया कोर्ट इज ऑल कोर्ट्स, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की हद तक तो वो अप्लाई नहीं करेगा।
नहीं, हम जो चीज आप देखें ना, ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने क्लियरली स्पेसिफाई कर दिया, तो अगर आपकी हम बात माने तो यही चीज सुप्रीम कोर्ट के साथ भी हमें स्पेसिफाई कर लेना चाहिए था कि आप ज्यूरिसडिक्शन को कर सकते हैं ना।
माय लॉर्ड, ये इसका
नया ज्यूरिसडिक्शन,
बिकॉज with respect to all other courts, and my Lord will bear in mind that this Federal Sharia Court was an insertion later in time in the 8th Amendment, but with respect to all other courts, the Parliament's power to legislate the jurisdiction and powers is broad. But with respect to Supreme Court, and this is the question that you had, that it begins by saying except the Supreme Court and then goes on, and what I submit is enlargement of jurisdiction and conferment of supplemental powers. With respect to Supreme Court, Parliament can only enlarge.
That point is taken that we read this extent with the upper portion, but suppose if we were to even read it with the other, the reading of it shows that to such extent, the extent must be provided expressly. Suppose it's not provided, then what do we do?
Right. So if the
Supreme doesn't give any extent of its jurisdiction,
my Lord, then because it says to such extent as is expressly authorized by or under, then what it does is that only, I mean, one reading of it is, and this is what my Lord Justice Ijaz has held.
If I may follow up on that question, there is perhaps another way to look at it. Suppose the word expressly were not there. Suppose it said to the extent authorized by or under the Constitution. Then the possibility could arise that this could mean either express authorization or by necessary implication. Perhaps the insertion of the word expressly is targeting the possibility of removing, or there being no possibility of any authorization by way of implication, howsoever necessary it may be. Expressly means expressly, full stop.
And if
all implications are cut out on by use of this word. Had this word not been used, then we would be back in our traditional approach, expressly or by necessary implication.
And for example, just giving an example, clause 5 of Article 199. Now, this is the power of the High Court, where the High Court can issue writs, and the definition of person then excludes certain persons, excludes the Supreme Court. No writ can be issued to the Supreme Court.
No, but that's an exclusion.
Yes.
मैं तो बात कर रहा हूँ ना कि expressly अगर ना हो तो आप उसके अंदर someone could argue कि भाई जो normal तरीका होता है कि और courts के कई judgments भी होते हैं एक्सप्रेसली और बाय नेसेसरी इम्प्लीकेशन, तो वो प्रिंसिपल शायद अप्लाई हो सकता है। बट जब एक्सप्रेसली कह दिया तो इम्प्लीकेशन खत्म हो गई। आपने एक्सप्रेस वर्ड्स दिखाने हैं, है या नहीं है, नो मैटर हाउ नेसेसरी इट मे बी, the
right.
implication is out. Maybe
That's
that's
right.
one reason.
That's right. And that's why
What is your take on it?
ये मेरी take उस पे ये है कि
And I'm
that's why
saying, as I am asking you a question.
Yes, इसलिए I go back to what I was submitting with regards to entry 55, that the language list and to such extent as is expressly authorized by or under the Constitution is with respect to all courts. But for the Supreme Court, it is only enlargement and supplementary powers. And when we read it,
मैं आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ एक्सप्रेसली से डालने से, वो एक्सप्रेसली तो आप भी आपकी इंटरप्रिटेशन पे भी एक्सप्रेसली तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट को लगता है ना,
नहीं लगता है। That's what I'm saying.
मुताबिक नहीं लगता।
नहीं लगता। That's what I've been arguing. कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट को नहीं लगेगा, सुप्रीम कोर्ट के लिए, बिकॉज सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की हद
को
तक
नहीं लगेगा, हाई कोर्ट्स और बाकी कोर्ट्स को लगेगा।
इसलिए क्यों curtail कर सकते
वहाँ
हैं?
पे आपकी इंटरप्रिटेशन के मुताबिक एक्सप्रेस होना चाहिए।
यस,
और आपने एग्जांपल दी 192 की और उसकी
212 की दी एग्जाम्पल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव
212
कोर्ट
में तो एक्सप्रेस ऑथराइजेशन तो नहीं है ना।
इसे 212 के अंदर तुम्हें बता दिया ना टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट ए बी एंड सी, एंड देन वहां ये भी बता दिया कि
तो आप कह रहे हैं ट्रिब्यूनल्स
एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कोर्ट्स एंड ट्रिब्यूनल्स। एंड 199 का फॉर एग्जाम्पल 199 का ये कह दिया
ट्रिब्यूनल्स के हवाले से अगर आप देखें ना, ट्रिब्यूनल्स के हवाले से आपने एंट्री देखी है?
जी, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कोर्ट्स एंड ट्रिब्यूनल्स,
हाँ, वो भी तो एक एंट्री है ना।
जी बिल्कुल।
वो 212 के लिए तो एक्सप्रेसली जरूरत ही नहीं है, वो तो एक स्पेसिफिक एंट्री है।
ये learned attorney general,
फॉर फेडरल सब्जेक्ट्स, यस।
as I understand, this is in the context of curtailment of jurisdiction as well. Supreme Court, this entry itself, it is part of the Constitution and it expressly authorizes the Parliament to enlarge its jurisdiction. This in itself is an express authorization.